live for our second installment. Jake George here. And of course, we're partnered here with Luke, my partner in crime. We're going to be talking to you guys tonight. We've got the house to ourselves, no guests tonight. So we're going to be running crazy and interacting with you guys in the chat and just talking about all the crazy stuff that's going on in futsal right now. There's a lot of news, good, bad, and different. So Luke and I are really excited to get into it. As you guys are listening in, feel free to interact in the chat, ask questions, tell us what you want to talk about. I see Josh from our previous stream is in the chat. Thank you for joining us. And we will be covering some scores from League One. They had their first event last week and another one inbound, I believe, this week. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, Josh, but I believe we have another week of events coming this weekend. And actually, some highlight reels are already making their way out onto YouTube through Josh, and they look spectacular. It looks like he's revamped the look, and a lot we can see from what we talked about from the last stream. Getting to know these players, seeing some names and some faces. It looks really, really cool. So kudos to you, Josh. Looks amazing, man. Love it. Absolutely love it. So Luke, it's been about a month since we've done this. A lot has happened. What do you think? What's on your mind with futsal right now?
What's on my mind with futsal is how much there is and how hard it is to follow. It's funny because you and I were talking before show, and we were talking about the difficulties we have. I'm like sorting through Costa Rican Facebook feeds, trying to understand the Spanish. I'm looking at the UEFA, Champions League, trying to understand the bracketing and like how many games were played. There was just so many games being played. Teams, I have no idea who they are. It's just so much to learn and understand, and the information is just disseminated at such a crazy rate. Like there's not a lot of like really concrete English information, so it's not really easy for us as English speakers to kind of to grab onto. Some of the Portuguese people and Spanish people are reaping the benefits of futsal being a more popular sport in their native language. But so that's kind of what's striking me as far as how much futsal is going on. I love it, and it's awesome, and I catch games, but sometimes I just have no idea who's who, what's going on. But yeah, that's kind of what's on my heart lately for this past month.
It's kind of funny because we have similar struggles because the way you follow Costa Rican futsal, I'm very big into the Argentinian futsal, and my friend getting me into San Lorenzo several years ago in their outdoor team has transcended into the futsal world. I follow them religiously, and yeah, sometimes it's tough because there's all I could say is thank God for the translate tweet button on Twitter. Otherwise, I don't know what I would do. But
Right.
it's
Right.
it's a
I've
ton
used
of
that
fun.
many times. I've used that
Oh
many
yeah.
times.
Whenever I see a thread, I'm like, oh boy, this is gonna take me a minute because I'm gonna have to translate all these, make sure I don't lose any of the tweets along the way. But man, it's a great time to be following futsal right now. Yesterday was the first day of fall here in the Northern Hemisphere, and the leaves are turning. Futsal's starting to get hot and heavy, so it's exciting. One thing that's on my mind, and Luke and I have talked about this quite a bit on our own, actually for the last month or so, and I want to make sure we talk about it today because it's a really big story coming out of the United States. We covered it in the video today, but I want to get in a little more detail. Women's futsal in the United States is really starting to ramp up, and it's very exciting because it's a space that's up to this point really not been well owned by the United States. We haven't really owned that space. We haven't done anything with it. And as I mentioned in my video, you actually have to go back to November of 2021 to see when Westcliff Athletics announced their women's futsal team. And it kind of just went without any kind of notice, which is shocking to me, especially considering some of the cheerleaders we have here in the United States for futsal that really like to bang the drum and talk about the good news. We really just didn't hear about it. And then what happened was it came to light in the interview with Futsal Focus that Ivan Todorovic did, and they talked about starting the men's team this year and getting the women's team going this year. And since that time, I've seen Westcliff post about wanting to recruit women players. We've not seen anything on signings just yet, but that tended to be the path for the men as well. Once they got really secured with a couple of roster spots and forming an actual team, that's when they started really showing us the players. So nothing to panic about, I don't think. I have a lot of faith in what they're doing out there. And I think it's a really exciting opportunity for these young women that are coming out of maybe academy futsal, want to continue playing. Beforehand, there was nothing to do. You went to the outdoor game if you could. Um, and now there's something for them. In addition to that, and I'll say it again, I don't mean to repeat the video, but in quite possibly the worst kept secret in sports, NFPL has been teasing us all summer with a women's league that's coming. NFPL women's teams. It looks like the teams that'll be involved so far are a lot of the originals. We are expecting an official announcement. Uh, I don't blame the NFPL for talking about it early because it's very exciting, and I'm really looking forward to see what they do with it and what the season structure is going to look like. With a lot of these teams having a men's and women's side, travel is going to have to be considered. These are semi-pro teams. You got to consider budget and travel time. So hopefully we see some double headers and really get big futsal fans in an arena for a long period of time. But I'm curious to see what that does to attendance. And then finally, we see a position open for United States women's futsal national team coach, which is super, super exciting. I think it's long overdue, but of course I'm biased. That's why this channel is called Futsal News, is we're big futsal fans here. But I think that there's finally an end game for the women that's super, super important. I have some concerns in the background that we'll never get answers on because we're out here in the public, but I'm concerned about budget. I'm concerned how it'll impact the men's team. They can get lumped into one budget because as it is right now, it's already pretty strapped. But there's a lot of different avenues now. We've got a place for young women, we got a place for adults, and we got a place for a national team. It's finally starting to build out and look really, really solid. So I've rambled on. Luke, what do you think about where we're at? What do you think is the most important to develop right now? And just kind of give us your thoughts on where we are.
A few points. Number one, last time my mic was too hot. So if you're in chat and if my mic is like distorting, please let me know. I just now thought of that when you're like asking something. I was like, oh no, I wonder if my mic's okay. So, but anyway, the women's game, Jake and I had like some lengthy conversations about this. I think I talked with you when I was driving back from California, but a couple of thoughts that fly through my head is number one, if you did not catch the tournament the NFPL put on this summer, was it this summer? I can't remember.
I believe it's
exactly.
July, middle of July.
Sure, NFPL. I think it featured Futsal Factory, Columbus. What were the other two?
Grand Rapids Olay.
Grand Rapids Olay
and Futsal Indy.
Futsal Indy, correct. So these four teams put on a pretty good show. I watched the games. I was entertained. I was impressed by the talent level. But by far and away, Futsal Factory stole the show. Futsal Factory just went to town. Progressing through the tournament, I think they turned it on more and more and more. I think they were playing a little bit of cautious at the very first, but then I saw some of the later games, and man, they just really laid it on thick. So congrats to them. I was really impressed with what happened and Drew put on out there with NFPL. The women's side, it was a great kind of taste to what's going to be happening hopefully here pretty soon with the NFPL Women's League. So the tournament previewing the league. Next up was Westcliff. Westcliff put on, I think the men's team, I think this is old news now, but just recently put together their first official practice. No word from the women's as far as what I've heard. If you know different, please say so. But excited to see what's going to happen there with the women's team. It was exciting to see the men's team. I saw the little photo. They did the kind of like the pre-game photo at practice, and I was like, "That's cool, man." It was just, it was, they're building up the hype over there. Really excited about that. One thing that I'm really curious about, both on the men and women's side, is to see who else is joining this futsal league, because Westcliff has to have someone to play. I haven't heard hide nor hair of any other colleges, but I guess something for us to look forward to. And finally, last point, the national team, the women's futsal national team, really thought-provoking concept. I wholeheartedly believe that the talent is out there. Jake and I talked about at length the depth of the women's talent pool. I've heard it said on speculation that if the women's national soccer team wanted to, they could rally two teams, an A and a B team, and they could take first and second in the World Cup, no problem. I've heard this based on the performances. I feel like that's a plausible concept. What that immediately makes me think of is uh, there's got to be more talent out there for to spread out to the futsal land. So there's got to be a way to pull some of this talent in the soccer pool for women, which are just dominant. They have to be able to pull some of these maybe B teamers. No shade thrown, but hey, come on over to the women's futsal national team and let's go win a championship. You get minutes, you know, and I know that's not a route that some girls will want to go, but maybe, just maybe, some girls would be like, I'm game. Let's go do it. What are your thoughts, Jake?
I'm torn on that because when I look at the men's team, especially the men's team that participated at CONCACAF and went to the World Cup in Lithuania, I think we maybe had three true futsalers on that team, and the rest were arena soccer players. And I think that it's a credit to Coach Dusan that he took a roster of almost completely arena soccer players and took them to a World Cup. CONCACAF is not an easy region to get out of historically. Now, you can say what you want about the Gold Cup coming out of COVID. None of these teams were fresh. None of them were really tuned up. And you can say what you want about how CONCACAF performed at the World Cup, which unfortunately wasn't great as a whole. But I what I love to see is the tweets we do see from the extended national team account on Twitter. They are integrating more and more futsalers. I think it's important that, at least for the men's side, that we recognize that. How that translates to the women, do they set the precedent and start bringing people in from other practices of soccer to put a team together, or do they stick to the true futsalers and really prove a point and drive it home? Um, Watching my region and seeing the young women that are coming out of the Great Lakes region when I go to the regional tournament in Akron, Ohio, there is plenty of talent in futsal on the women's side, and it's actually really a shame that there hasn't been an outlet for them up to this point, because there's been a lot of wasted talent over the years that didn't get on a national scale. We got really excited at one point because the 23 and under Olympics, the Junior Olympics, was supposed to host futsal, and we thought, oh, hey, this might be our shot. And it didn't quite come to fruition. It's something that's still kind of bouncing around, where we've got a foot in the door as far as the futsal community is concerned into the Olympics. It's been there before. It can happen again. It was received well when it was in the Junior Olympics in Argentina. And we have coaches here in the United States that were a part of that experience. And I think if you give them the right women from the United States, they could absolutely compete and be competitive and win and potentially win a World Cup or an Olympic tournament. Um, I would love. I'm a bit of a purist though when it comes to that. I would love to see it be futsal people and create a platform for these people and reward the women that are sticking with futsal throughout their career, as opposed to maybe pulling somebody in from say arena soccer, like what's happened with the men.
Yeah, I think I 100% agree. I think kind of where my thought immediately goes is, how can we compete? How can we compete now? Um, yeah, I 100% agree with you that yes, the more purest route is going to take you further and deeper into a national team or a national league in America. But at the same time, I feel like it's the chicken and egg scenario, cart before the horse, that type of scenario. If you can't beat the drum immediately, I think it's hard for certain folks to get around an idea and build on it. So my idea is can we take these soccer players, put together an extremely successful team, really create some buzz around the sport, and then build on it from there. And then we'll set up our systems and pull the players through a more traditional route in that way. So that's kind of just my thought. And as well as I do, the what buzz and what hype does for you, and it gets you down the road quite a bit. But at the same time, I do agree with you in the purest form of how do we pull players from a futsal background. But in speaking to that point, I know we did talk about the coach, that the U.S. Soccer or U.S. Futsal Federation posted an opening for the U.S. Women's National Team coach. So I know we talked about this at length, but Jake, what were your thoughts when we were talking about the coaching position?
It's exciting. It's exciting in the sense that it's happening, that they have recognized that it needs to happen. I have concerns. My biggest concerns are budget. When you think about futsal in the United States, the way that people might not realize this, but the way that it works is futsal, beach soccer, and the Paralympic team, and I believe there's even a deaf team. They all roll up into this extended national teams group, and there's a senior director that's in charge of that, and his name is escaping me at the moment. But the point of that being that we've already kind of been roped into a group, so we're already in theory sharing a budget with all these other sports. When you even look at the Twitter handle for the extended national teams, there isn't a dedicated futsal Twitter page for United States soccer. You have to scroll through. If you're not interested in beach volleyball, and if you're not interested in the Paralympic team, you have to scroll through all the tweets about them to find the ones about futsal and what's going on. Not the worst thing in the world, but maybe if you're a casual fan, you're not interested in doing that much of a deep dive. So I'm curious to see. So now we're going to add to that a women's side to futsal that has to share in that limelight when they get it. And although I feel that there is plenty of groundwork here in the United States for the women's side, even though we don't really get to talk about it and are only just now seeing it develop, it's kind of been brewing through our academies here in the United States, and it's just never really bubbled to the top because we never got to take the lid off the pot. So I'm I'm very excited about that, but like I said, I'm concerned about stage time, so to speak. I'm concerned that they're if they share the budget with the men's futsal team, how much can they really do? Um, are they going to be able to do the kind of travel that these other teams are doing? Are they going to be able to compete in the other tournaments that these other teams are doing? I noticed when I was looking at the job description that the manage the management team is per diem. It's a per diem staff. So that means they only get paid when they're doing something for the national team. It's per event. So that means you're asking people to basically do this as a side job. And I'm fairly certain that the men's team works the same way. It's one thing for that to be the case for players. That makes sense. But for a coaching staff that right in the job description, their requirement, the expect, I'm looking at it right now just to make sure I'm not talking out my butt to make sure. So if I'm looking down, that's why. It, Part of the job description is to build this up and create connections with clubs and academies, not only in the US, but around the globe to foster the growth of women's futsal. And if it's per diem, are they going to be limited based on a budget and can only do so much? Are they already handcuffed before they even get started? So even just reading through the job description, I mean, I'm no LinkedIn expert or anything. I'm just looking at this and thinking, and obviously we don't get all the details because we're just the public. It wouldn't make sense for them to release that kind of stuff to us, but it is a concern of mine that it's going to kind of stunt the growth.
True. I, again, I 100% hear you on that. Again, so my theory is all these hurdles put before them. I mean, obviously, some of the language in the job description is indicating, probably one of those things where we want to try this. They kind of say we want to try this, and you hate to hear it because as a player or a coach or someone pushing for futsal in the USA, you kind of want to say to them, please don't try this, just do it. This is a
Yes.
very large sport. It's not, it's not a soccer training tool. It's its own sport. It's its own thing. Um, so I just feel like in the soccer world, I mean, you've been there in the youth soccer world, you hear these, it's a training tool, and it kind of gets this redheaded stepchild, you know, vibe to it, even though everyone loves it. Um, you know, they definitely, you need to have the language of, we're going to do this. We're going to reach out. We're going to take it seriously. Um, so in that same breath, my opinion still stands. You need to put whatever they're going to do with this needs to be an out and out showing. It needs to be. They need to shame U.S. soccer for not taking them seriously. They need to go in, be dominant, take everything. It's like I say to some people going on an adventure. They're young and they want to go on a business venture. Sleep in your van, eat top ramen, just go pedal to the metal, make everyone impressed, and then figure out the rest out later. Just kick butt now, figure it out later. That's still my opinion. Again, I do hear what Jake has to say on the development, but with the way things, with the fickle crowd you have in the U.S., they want to see a trophy right now, and they want it yesterday. So that's just my opinion.
Well, and there's something to be said for that too. What I'd love to see, it, I would love to know more about um, if there's any outdoor players that have futsal experience or trained in futsal as a kid. One of the things that came up again recently with the U.S. roster selection was Christian Pulisic. He
Mm.
has a futsal background, and he credits a lot of his success to playing futsal at a young age as a development tool. It can be a development tool to get to outdoor. I'm fine with that. It does truly make us a bit of a redheaded stepchild, like you said,
Mhm.
um, in the sense that it can be seen as just a development tool. How can you do anything professional with something like that? Well, I think there's people that are much better at indoor. There's people that are much better at futsal than they are at outdoor, and there's a home for that. And then you combine that with the fact that it's a faster paced game that Americans tend to enjoy. Uh, Something like a basketball that's really big here, then it can really catch fire. So really important. Again, I think that budget will be important for that, because for you to go big, like you said, they're going to need to really just spam the world on this. Hey, this is what we're doing. Check out what we're doing. Check out this highlight reel. Get some marketing behind it. And it's something that the men's team, I believe, has been missing for a while too. Is these guys are putting in work behind the scenes. I'm fortunate enough to know the assistant coach Otto, and I know that those guys are working like crazy. They're doing ID camps, uh, and even though I said that we have to share the spotlight, I do have to give the extended national team account credit. They've been covering that those camps have been going on their Twitter page, whereas before, if we weren't in a tournament, we didn't hear about what was going on with the team. So that's really encouraging, and I thank them for that. So I'm hoping they take the same steps with the women's team. Can we please see what's going on? Can we please watch this develop? Can we get excited and feel like we're a part of something grassroots that's on a national level, and follow it and fall in love with it the way that we do with our traditional sports, so to speak?
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Uh, Again, do do we have a women's team with futsal talent? Who knows? I feel like were they there? Were there if the structure was in place for futsal and a pathway, would some of these players that are now on the women's national team be on a different road? Would they be that? Would they be on a different road? What blew my mind, and this is, you take it for what it's worth. But I used to run a futsal facility. My daughters used to play, and some of these kids I was coaching, and my daughters too, said to me like dad or coach, I'd rather play futsal. They liked it. I think I really feel like it was just different enough. I feel like some of them really enjoyed how engaging it was rather than the chess match of soccer, because some of them were starting to get into that place where, if they're playing it up the right hand side of the field and you're playing left back, you kind of are not really involved too much in the game. So um, I think a lot of them liked the ultimate engagement, the back and forth. You're always running. You're engaged no matter what. You're if you're on the court, you're in, and you're stuck in for the whole minutes you're playing. So that was kind of a thing. But also, these pathways for these players, would they have played futsal? I don't know. And I think us giving these people an opportunity to say, here's a chance to use your futsal skills. I think there may be some bite on that. I don't know. But again, soccer is the lucrative path. It's just the way it is. And that's why we are the development tool, and we'll be that way for a while until we establish this name through the men's team and the women's team. Um, that just soccer is too alluring and money is too much. It's hard. It's a difficult pill to swallow as a purist and someone who's a fan and wants it to happen. But soccer, if you can land the contract in soccer, I mean that is your golden ticket. You know what I mean?
Well, and even here where arena soccer is pretty well established, and this might be going off on a bit of a tangent, but so I'll do my best to keep it kind of close. But you talk about the money and where the money's at. Arena soccer is well enough established here that that's where people go. And we were talking before we got live about some folks that we know in the futsal community that are getting involved or were involved or are involved in arena soccer. And it's like, well, yeah, I mean, you can beat the futsal drum as much as you want, but at the end of the day, the poor guy's got to make a living. And do you follow the money to arena soccer? At what point do you say, hey, look, until there's some money in futsal, I got to at least put food on my table in the meantime. And yes, I'll still support it. And yes, I'll still advocate it. But it's just interesting because it's new, right? So it's not proven. That's just like you said, the chicken before the egg. They're not going to throw a bunch of money into something they don't know what it's going to do. So I really hope that the fans get behind this. Molly in the chat said, love to talk about the women's teams. Yeah, it's awesome. It's super exciting. I hope that people love it and I hope people follow it because we're going to need that. It's going to be our responsibility as fans to prove that there's a demand. And I think that based on the talent pool of women in general in sports here in the United States, compared to maybe some other countries, that it has um, a very dynamic future that could be potentially greater than what the men's team is doing.
I 100% agree. Um, not to just to kind of add on or to kind of extend the point. Um, Soccer's great and soccer's fine. I love soccer, but from an entrepreneurial standpoint, as someone who's done business, um, I just feel like this futsal has so much potential. There's timeouts in it. You're not gonna step on some 80-year-old Englishman that lives in England who's gonna just scream at the top of his lungs if you mess with his traditional soccer and you add a timeout. You know what I mean? So you won't offend a traditionalist in soccer that says, "How dare you add an extra water break?" or "How dare you add another sub?" Make the goal bigger, make it smaller, whatever. Like all those things.
VAR.
Yeah, yeah, they're losing their minds. It's already built in. It's an indoor facility. It's really similar to something like basketball. The timeouts already built in, the out of bounds and the halftime. All of it's just built for media. Like it's built for. And I hate to be like the money guy, but at the same time, money helps make things happen. The advertising potentials are out the roof. It's a quick paced sport. You can build around it. It has definite cadence and breaks to it. And you could even, it's such a sport that wants so much attention. I think it's wide open to this, similar to the NBA, who basically built their league around media, around television, and same with football. Football has built their league around television because they know that they have to use money to build what they're doing. Um, I think MLS sometimes falls a little flat on their face in that regard, but I just feel like futsal is one of those untapped gems that if someone got behind it, media wise and money wise, could be very profitable and lucrative to jumpstart those leagues in the U.S. Because U.S. we do it. We do all the NBAs and the NFLs and the. I think we could do it. I do. I really feel like it could be something.
I think that's a great segue in another topic that came up this month too, and we can switch gears here a little bit, and we're going to travel over to Europe, specifically to England. They got some. We just did a video and really praising the momentum they've gained. The FA series has worked in conjunction with LNFS England to create a futsaling ladder similar to the football ladder in the FA. And then just a couple weeks later, they get some bad news, and their media sponsor, BT, was bought out by Discovery. And in the process, futsal was axed from their media plans. So now we're looking at a league that had media, was getting great attention. They were hitting numbers that BT said themselves were very healthy and exciting. There was growth. And then when you look at their YouTube channel views, I'm watching these games in the morning at the same time they're going on as Premier League games, and they're pulling in 300 to 500 people, depending on who's playing on their YouTube stream as well. So a little bit shocking from, and again, a couple of biased guys sitting here, right, that like futsal, but a little shocking to me that it got cut, especially so quickly and so suddenly. And my heart really goes out to those guys in England because they had a really good thing going and they've kind of had the rug pulled out from under them. So someone that I've been talking to quite a bit and getting my news from England to report back to you guys is the Futsalsa podcast and the guys on that podcast. So I am going to plug them here. I would not know nearly as much as I do about what's going on over there if not for them. They released their second episode, a bit of an emergency episode, describing what's going on there and what they do know and what they don't know. They don't know what's going to happen as far as streaming at this point in time. They don't know if the structure of the season will change to maybe accommodate easier streaming options for teams. There's talk about potentially going to a neutral site every week. One team hosts each week. All the teams play there and travel to a different spot each week, and they stream from one location so that they don't have to put cameras in multiple locations. There's questions around what that'll do to the teams as far as ticket sales. Of course, the players are going to love a home and away option. If you only have 1 or 2 home games a season, that really changes the dynamic of what you were looking forward to for the season and that home court advantage. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. I don't know what the answer is there. In fact, I don't think anyone does. But hopefully we still see some kind of stream from them because they do have a healthy online audience. So really curious to see what comes out of that. And if another media group steps up and says, hey, this is a marketing opportunity, it's somewhat proven here already, or does it fall on the FA to find a way to get this out to the people?
Yeah, that's such a rough gig. What a heartbreaking story. It's funny because you were talking about the single locations and what are they going to do with their season. Uh, I don't know if anybody's knows this information or if we release this information that Jake and I have helped the NFPL and some of the streaming. I've helped the NFPL stream just as someone who wants to see futsal grow. I've gone in and helped with Grand Rapids, a little bit with Futsal Factory. I don't think I've done anything with any of the other teams, but just kind of helping things grow and kind of being in the back rooms and the behind the scenes chats. These are some of the things that are talked about. How in the world do you make a legitimate production of futsal on such a shoestring budget? These are some things I've been trying to help with NFPL to figure out. Hey, how do we do this affordably? How do we do this with minimal manpower? They are huge hurdles, and my heart does go out to the boys over in England because it is a difficult challenge. These single locations are smart ideas, but it does. I know Jake's a huge fan of the TIFOs and the supporter groups. It does add challenge to growing that type of an environment. So yeah, again, my heart goes out to them. It's a difficult road to go down to figure out these budgetary demands and try and keep marching forward with the futsal, the futsal league and the broadcast of the games.
Well, and it is. You're right. I'm a big fan of the fan experience. I'm really big on it. I hype on it. I was a big part of that with our semi-pro team in my area when it was live. I wanted to bring a certain kind of energy that complemented what I thought our team was doing, but keeping it family friendly as well, because I knew there'd be a lot of youngsters there that were watching their coaches and their heroes, and we accomplished that. But on the other hand, when it comes to the total health of the league, I would much rather see if the answer to the equation is, hey, we got to just go to one site every week, guys, because I can't afford to buy 8 cameras for the league and we can't hire 8 crews to do this right, then by all means do it that way. It works. We've seen it work in France. France does that. We've seen it work in Indonesia. Indonesia is an archipelago. So to have teams traveling every week, all the teams traveling every week all over the country is not feasible. So they host it at a single place every week. It's a different spot. And their fan attendance is extremely healthy. When you watch the highlights from Ricardinho playing for Pendikar, he's playing in these different places and they are all full. They're all full. So it's doable. it's doable. Is it a best case scenario? No. Is it as great of an experience for the players that are in it at the time? No. But it's doable. And if it means, hey, we got to stream, but we'll stream it right, it'll be high quality. So even if you're not near your team, you'll at least be able to watch it online. And you might not lose fans that much, but they have a very competitive soccer world that they're living in over there with the Premier League, Championship, League One, League Two before, and those are all their pro leagues before they get into semi-pro in the outdoor game. So it's going to be interesting to see how that impacts the growth of futsal. And I think we also got some news out of England as well that the national teams might be coming back. So it's they're going to start with the teenagers, the teenage groups. I think U23 through U19 was discussed. Men's and women's, where that falls, we're still unsure. Right now, it sounds like the focus is on the men over there on the national team and bringing it back in pieces. But I think that the important thing to know is if you want to continue to foster that, and the answer is your local teams in England, man, I sure hope the FA finds a way to support this media crisis they're having right now so they can keep the sport healthy, keep pumping money into it so they can come back. They were very competitive in Europe. There's no reason in the world why they can't come back and be competitive. But, money drives the machine, and they're going to need to figure out a way to replace this media sponsor.
Right. Agreed. It's a sad state of affairs. The money has to be such a crucial part of this, but it is true, and it's just the way things are. I think everyone's in agreement with that. And you're absolutely right. The broadcast is such a key element to the success of a league or the success of teams because we've talked about this at length. If you don't know who you're cheering for, how can you attach yourself to a team? How can you understand who the players are, who the coaches are, who they're going up against? Those. I think as Americans and people who watch really, really extremely high quality broadcasts, that all fades into the background of our fan experience because it's a given. Now, as futsal, aficionados and futsal connoisseurs, we love to take in the futsal, both language and just looking at streams that just don't have the quality. You start to really think to yourself like, oh man, I'm missing out on these commentators. I'm missing out on the name titles, the scoreboards, the time bug, just all these things, the replays, all these things start rushing back. You're like, man, I kind of am missing out on a lot of things because there's only so much you can capture in a screen, and there's only so much you can do to figure out who the people are. So I've talked about it. Jake's talked about it. In order for a league to grow, you have to know who the people are. You have to know who the players are. You have to know who the coaches are. You have to know who's scoring. You have to know who's playing good defense. Do excuse me? Do people are they in foul trouble? Especially from a new fan who doesn't understand what's going on. Do they understand what's going on when they get their fifth foul? Do they understand the gravity of what it means to the dynamic of the game? Do they understand what the timeouts are doing? These commentators are bringing so much to the color of the game and helping fans understand and grow leagues that when it's gone, it's a definite apparent loss in the game.
I agree 100%. Yeah, so I'm curious to see how this pans out. I think there's a lot of upside to the English game. Uh, when you think about the performance of teams like London Helvetia that have gotten onto the bubble of preliminary rounds in the UEFA Champions League in futsal, when you see the total growth of the teams as a whole over there, it's looking really good. The quality's good. They had a great commentary team. It's something that I hope is maintained in some capacity because I kind of got hooked on it last season. So a lot of it's for selfish reasons. I want to watch it again, but uh, and especially too because here in the States we're just in such a developmental level. It's all still so new here that when you do get this itch for futsal, there's not a lot to scratch it. And even the teams that are doing a great job, I mean, they can only be on so much. So to be able to fill some of those gaps, the way people do with the Premier League and Bundesliga and League One and La Liga, I watch that in the morning and I go watch my MLS team in the evening or whatever it is. I think that it still has its place as far as a global audience, and so I'm really hoping and with bated breath to see what happens coming out of England.
Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more.
If you guys are in the chat with us and you want us to cover anything specific, if you're here live, please feel free to chime in. I know now might be a good time to cover what Josh talked about and talk about the League One results.
Yeah.
And if you guys have anything else you want to hear from us, there is a lot of news going on out there right now. The Finalissima just happened. There's like we mentioned, the Champions League preliminary round just ended about a month ago. And I know I don't have enough to talk about this, but I do know that the United States men's national team in futsal will be making a trip soon for a tournament of friendlies. Once I get some more information on that, I will be sure to put a video out for you guys so we can talk about that, because that's really exciting. I don't think that's happened under the Doosan era just yet, because of travel restraints from COVID primarily. So this is really exciting to see us stretch our legs a little bit, see what the look of the team is in these friendlies when they come. And then one thing I wouldn't mind talking about too, if we get to it and we still have time, is the Copa Libertadores, which is coming up this weekend. I think I already mentioned it actually on this live stream. I am a massive, massive San Lorenzo fan, and they will be defending their title in the Copa Libertadores in Buenos Aires, Argentina, starting this weekend. And I'm going to try my best not to be obnoxious about it, but I bring it all on. I cannot wait. I cannot wait. And my boys are going to bring it home again. I'm telling you right now. So, with that in mind, let's keep it in the States for now, and let's talk about League One. So they had a total of 4 games last weekend. Baltimore Kings finished out on top over the course of the weekend. They won 5-2 against Washington, and they also won their game against Eastern Shore Impact 7-1. We also saw, as I mentioned, Washington was in action. They lost their first game to Baltimore, as stated. They beat Pittsburgh to end the day 3-2. So they're in the middle of the table, 1-1. Pittsburgh is 1-1 as well. They won their game against Eastern Shore Impact 6-1 to pick up their win. And unfortunately, at the moment, Eastern Shore's in last. They're still looking for that first win going into this weekend. But keep an eye on Josh Danza's YouTube. In fact, let me grab that and link it for you guys in the chat. Josh does a fantastic, fantastic job of posting highlights. They're great quality, and he I don't know if he did this because of our conversation. I'm sure it was already in the works, because I know he's really good at this kind of stuff. But Josh actually started putting in the names and some photos, some profile photos of the players when they score. And the graphics are looking really great. It's very professional. I think you guys are going to like it. So let me copy that over for you guys right now. Please go check him out. He's got some great quality content over there.
And if you're interested in what League One is all about, our previous podcast or live cast was with Josh Danza of League One Futsal. So if you're interested and you say to yourself, I want more information, there is a plethora of information in that podcast. We talked in depth about League One. We talked about Josh and his upbringing and his views on futsal and the way things are growing over there on the Eastern Shore, League One Futsal.
Absolutely. And I think if you guys go to the channel page for us, I created a playlist for Futsal Live, so this will be added to it as well. You can find the live stream in its entirety. If you missed any of it, once it closes out, I will post the VOD there. So go back and check out the VOD with Josh if you want to learn more about League One Futsal and what it is. Josh was very candid about what it is and where he thinks their place is in the ladder of futsal, and where they're at today based on talent level and production. So if you want to have some honest feedback on a league that really knows where they're at right now and what their role is, you should go check it out. So I give you a ton of credit for that, Josh. It takes a lot to know where you are and know where you can be and have an honest conversation about it. And I think it's really refreshing to hear, because there's quite a few folks that aren't willing to do that. And I think one of my pet peeves is, here in the United States, a lot of people claim to be professional teams, and that's not what it is. We're not there yet. So thank you for that.
Right. Speaking of the Copa Lib for futsal, so Jake, you mentioned San Lorenzo. Do you know who they're facing off against this weekend?
Let me see if I can pull up schedule.
Because I was actually scrolling through my Facebook feed. That's where I get some of my futsal. I saw that Boca is taking on Cascaval. Is that how we say it? The Rattlesnakes. I believe that's one of the
Yes,
matchups.
Cascavel out of Brazil. So let me see. I think that Group A. This is showing outdoor. Excuse me.
It just while Jake is looking this up, this is something else we talked about is the dissemination of futsal information is an absolute disaster. It is so difficult to find anything um, regarding futsal, language barriers, but also just it's difficult. I don't know why futsal is so difficult, but it is, and we talked a lot about that.
So again, I'm going to try not to be obnoxious, but I am going to get on a bit of a soapbox here for 2 seconds. When you this is why the Libertadores, even with the language barrier, is a better regional tournament to watch than the Champions League, in my opinion. This is one man's opinion. These guys have their own futsal page for Twitter, and they have done nothing for the last month but post about the teams that are involved. So yes, I am hitting that translate tweet button every time I'm getting on it. But if you want to get a quick blurb about each team that's participating, regardless of what country they're coming from, they have highlighted every single team up to this point leading up to the weekend. I think that's huge. Meanwhile, in the Champions League, it's hard because pronouncing teams is tough once it gets outside of your native language. I have no idea where they're from. I have no idea what the league is like there. And even just the structure to make it through the Champions League in futsal is just absurd to me. I'm reading this and I feel like I'm a fairly intelligent individual. Like I can read. I at least got that going for me. I have no idea how these teams are making it through to the final round. I'm reading through it and I go, this is like an insurance policy I'm reading through where it's, well, it's this, but it's not this, but it's this, but it's not this. It's crazy. I don't understand.
It's pretty
But
wild.
the Copa Libertadores is very clean. San Lorenzo made it in Group 1 as the top seed, as the defending champs. The rest of them had to qualify. It's very simple. It's very, very simple. And each league has an X amount of slots in that tournament based on their size and their talent. So there you go. It was that easy to describe. Meanwhile, I've read the Champions League description 8 times and I still don't know what I'm talking about. So I'm
It's
not even going to touch
wild.
it.
If you
It's
if you
insane.
if you have 8 hours to kill on a Saturday, I highly recommend.
Yeah, at that point, and get back with me and let me know what it means because I am just lost in the sauce. I cannot tell you what's going on.
Right.
So I believe that
Tell me the
San
lineup again.
Lorenzo's. Say that again.
Tell me the lineup again for this weekend.
So this weekend, San Lorenzo will be facing a team from Ecuador, SS Boca.
Okay.
And then we see, and also, so that is going to be the 24th at 10 o'clock, 10 a.m. local time. So that would be, if you're in the United States, that's Central Time. Argentina's on Central Time. Then we will see the other two teams in the group, which is the Universidad de Chile, which not surprisingly is out of Chile. They will face, I can't roll my R's. This is going to be awful. Cerro Porteño. They're out of Paraguay. I do know that. I do know they're out of Paraguay. So I've been watching that group closely, so I know a little bit more about the teams there because I'm watching my beloved San Lorenzo, watching Ciclón. But Boca plays at 2 o'clock Central Time against Cascavel Futsal out of Brazil. That will be a very, very good game.
That will be a very good game.
That is a game to watch right there. If we can find it, I will. If you guys join us in Discord, I post links to live streams to games when I can find them, particularly if I think that they're going to be good games. That is two very good teams. Cascavel beat Magnus out to get that slot in this tournament. And if you know anything about Brazilian futsal, Magnus are titans in the sport, almost always in first place. And they won 6-1 against Magnus to get that spot. So these guys are going to be really good. I believe they're seated currently third in the Brazilian league, Cascavel. And Boca, I believe, is towards the top with San Lorenzo. I think Boca's in first. Boca is actually my biggest concern against San Lorenzo. Boca has a very strong team. They've had San Lorenzo's number during the regular season this year. They beat them out in the Gold Cup, their domestic cup, and they've beat them in their last regular season game. Boca Juniors has a fantastic futsal team. They always do. They're going to be a great team to watch. Peñarol out of Uruguay is in that group as well. And then Deportivo Panta Wallon. I am not sure where they're from. I will have to look into that. But that rounds out Group B. They play at 4 o'clock Central Time.
Do you
And
know
then
if these streams are
Baracas,
available?
I do not. I am hoping that these guys are on YouTube because they actually streamed Copa America streamed the Finalissima throughout. They caught every game, so I'm hoping that they follow suit. And if that's the case, I'll be sure to post something on Twitter as well. If you're not in the Discord, if you don't have Discord.
Yeah, like I said, I've had the pleasure of watching. I think I watched a few Boca games. I've watched a few San Lorenzo games. Um, Watched a lot of Cascaval just because they pop up in my feed and I'm following them. They stream a lot of stuff. It's extremely talented team, high flying, very fast, really quick on the attack. Super entertaining to watch. Plus, you get to read, you know, all their 90,000 sponsors they have on their jersey. They have them. They
Yeah,
have
if
a
they're
lot on there. They released. They just did a jersey release. I caught that on my feed, and they're like, they released this new jersey, and like, oh, check it out. I'm like, it looks like an advertisement, just like the other one. I felt bad for him, but I was like, whatever.
yeah, definitely. It's certainly. I think that might be a Brazilian thing because the outdoor teams or the traditional football teams are the exact same way.
Yeah.
There's some teams that they just, I mean, they are a walking, talking billboard to the max. But
Well,
hey,
wait,
whatever funds our beloved sport, go for it. I'm
yeah.
not below it.
Wherever the team that Diego Chara came from to the Portland Timbers, I think it's Deportivo Tolima. I think it's Tolima. I think it is in Colombia. He played in the Colombian league, and I remember looking him up. And his jersey, he had like they're on the shorts, they're on like the sleeve of the shorts, the sleeve. It's like it's just everywhere. And I'm like, oh my gosh,
The
what is
butt of the
going
shorts. Yeah. Oh yeah.
on? But we don't talk about soccer here.
That's right. Stop that. So the um the last group is Group C for the Libertadores, and I very honestly do not know much about any of these four teams. Once it gets outside of Brazil and Argentina, I really don't know how to follow these other leagues um, at this point in time. But I do know from what I read on their Twitter page, I believe that these teams are from Bolivia and Colombia.
Ooh, Colombian. I've been meaning to try and find something out of Colombia because I think could be fairly exciting.
You would think so. I mean, just the nature of the culture there, as well as the fact that it's just it fits well in a country like that. That's something that we've talked about before. I don't know if we've necessarily talked about it here, but talking to people in general just about futsal in my regular life, and it's a great sport for countries where you can play it anywhere. You know,
Mhm.
I think that one of the things that we think about with outdoor soccer is, oh, well, where do I have that much space to play and that big of a goal to play in?
Right.
Now, of course, you can get creative as a kid and do a pickup game any way you want. But if you really want to do something futsal related or street soccer, which is very closely related to it, to our sport, it's simple. If there's room, you play. That's it.
Right.
Do you have a ball? Great. Let's do this. So in places like Colombia, where there's a lot of youth that are playing in the streets, Brazil, perfect example. The LNF is a massive league. There's a reason why.
Yeah.
And in Argentina. In fact, a lot of these outdoor clubs we see in Argentina were created out of the sense of getting kids off the street and getting them playing somewhere safe where they wouldn't get hit by a car.
Right.
So I know San Lorenzo very well, of course. I've talked about 800 times already in the last 10 minutes, but I know for a fact, just knowing them, that their history, their start came from a priest that saw kids playing in the street, almost get hit by a vehicle, and said, "Hey, I'll let you kids play inside the courtyard of the church as long as you come to church on Sunday." And it was a deal. And that is how the club was born. So
Interesting.
it's really cool. It's really cool to see that. And a lot of these countries in South America, that's part of the culture. You play in the streets. You play all the time. You never drop the ball.
Right.
So, yeah, I think that's a part of the reason that you see a surge in popularity in the Eastern Hemisphere as well. When you think about some of these
Mm.
third world countries where it's just a lot of dirt, there's a lot of busy streets. You find an alleyway and you play. and it complements how these kids are growing up. So yeah, I would be very curious to see what that Colombian league looks like. I think it would be very entertaining.
And just to speak to that point, I did have the pleasure and privilege of traveling to Rio de Janeiro um, years ago, but now that you're talking about it, like kind of occurs in my mind. It says like, so why are these sports popular? Why is futsal popular in these places? And what you're saying is it's easy and accessible, and it's very very true. Um, a nice soccer field in Rio de Janeiro is a hot commodity. It's hard to find. They're reserved for these clubs. It's just extremely concrete jungle, and even if it's grass, it's just beat to death. It's like it's dirt because it's used, and no one's there to take care of it. There's not enough money for maintenance on a field. Um, so some of these less economically developed countries, or they're just concrete jungle. It seems to me that yeah, the real estate's at a premium. You play wherever you can, and literally, I was there. They were literally playing on stairs, like it's uneven ground by like stairs. They're still playing. Literally everywhere you go, every corner you turn, there's two sticks up in the air with net on them of some fashion everywhere. It just was everywhere. But to that point as
Wow.
well, speaking to the American culture, I see privilege. I see more than enough soccer fields, yet no one's playing.
Hmm.
It's almost as it makes you think, well, what if we took it all away? Would it create the want or need? It's kind of, is it that we have too much? It's too accessible that everyone's like, it's easy, whatever, I don't care. I don't know. It just kind of made me think that we live in America with no want. We have everything we want. We have everything we need. You want a great soccer field? Literally, I could go down to Boise and play on their turf. You know, top notch. I could do that today, like right now. So it's just interesting to me that these places that have so much want and need churn out these, you know, you know, all-star futsal players. You know, left, right, and center. So who knows?
I
Rant
also wonder
over.
too if it's no. I also wonder too if it's part of the culture here compared to maybe some other countries and getting involved in clubs and academies too. It's like you said, Luke. I'm kind of paraphrasing what you said a little bit at this point, but it's too organized to
Right.
a point that you're on your travel team. In our case, you're on your futsal academy in conjunction with that academy team for outdoor soccer. And then you're doing this and then you're doing this. It's become a job for our youth to be involved in soccer.
Right.
And maybe their reprieve is, yeah, there's no shot I'm going out there and playing on that field. And I also question too, maybe the financial uh, accessibility that maybe kills the sport for some kids because they can't be involved in the organized part as well, and maybe it just kills their interest in the sport in general. But it, you could look at a lot of different things on that.
Sure.
I think that there's certainly factors from all directions that impact it, but in these other countries where it's more developed, it's been around for longer, it's just a passion. I retweeted it. It was an outdoor game at Boca, but I just was so in love with this video. And it's a kid. He's got to be this young boy. Uh, I don't know. He might be 5 or 6,
Right.
and he is almost in tears chanting.
Right.
He's just so in love. It's just part of. It's just part of it. It's just
Well,
part of life, and we
I've,
just don't
I've,
quite have that here.
I've talked to soccer boards, like soccer organization boards before, and my statement has been simple: is I don't think you're battling about getting Billy or Susie from this town or that town, or if we just did more Facebook advertising. I really don't think that's the hurdle. I really what I would say to these people is like we're battling against culture. It's a culture. You have to create a culture in which, you know, I think it's the people out in uh, Joy to the People. Joy to the People, their organization is based on from the commentary I heard, is pretty wild. Like these kids show up and they throw soccer balls out in the court and they're like, go figure it out. And they say it gets pretty buck wild, but they're like, it's great. These kids love to play the game because there's no adults lording over them. There's no fees to be paid. There's no schedule, and like kids are scheduled to death nowadays. They have to go to practice. They have to do this drill. They have to get to the Nevada tournament to get the trophy, to get the medal, to get to the showcase, to get to the college, to get to the, and it's just on and on and on. Like and that's scheduled out from 10 years old, and these kids never have a chance to play. And I really identify strongly with these joy of the people that let the kids play. And futsal is one of those things. Is street soccer. Let them play. Let the kids play. Let them be kids. Because if they develop that passion in them, if they develop that love of the game, then that's going to serve them throughout their entire life. And when the time comes, when maybe the professional leagues around, they want to keep playing. It's not just a job to them anymore. They don't burn out, but that passion also translates over to people watching, like Jake, you said, with the supporters groups, with the league, with people wanting to watch. I think people want to see something that's passionate. People like to see those supporters groups because I think people just want to see people excited, and it could be over like potato peeling if people got really crazy about it. I just think people want to see a group that's passionate and interesting. I think that's a lot of the driver, but anyway, I digress.
Well, and passion is contagious, right? So there it is.
Right.
It's
Right.
you see someone else get really passionate about the game, and maybe that's what hooks you in.
Right.
I think about some of the sports experiences in general that I've been a part of, and I think of being at Ohio State versus Michigan in Ohio Stadium and that energy. I think about when I
Right.
went to USA versus Mexico uh, in Columbus for the outdoor game for a World Cup qualifier, and I think about even just my experience with the supporters group in Akron for the Vulcans, and they all stick in my head in a passionate way for different reasons. And but the same line in every single one of those, the consistent piece in every single one of those was there was passion that roped me in, sucked
Right.
me into that energy, and amplified it within myself. And that's how you grow a sport. You
Sure.
know, I love the, and I know we say that we're going to focus on futsal here, but one of the things I love is right before football season started, I saw so many memes about it's that time of year where a football team is going to decide my mood for the next 4 months. Yes, 100%. I am
Yes.
with that. Like
Yes.
that. I am a soccer guy. I'm not. I follow football. I follow the local teams, but I am a soccer guy through and through, and that's how I feel. Do not talk to me for the rest of the day if my team loses. I do not want to talk to you. I'm gonna sulk. I'm gonna maybe do some yard work and try and clear my head, but it affects my mood. It affects my day. That is how much the passion has sucked me in,
Right.
and that kind of thing is contagious. It's healthy for any sport across the board. Period. If you're a sport or a team that is struggling with attendance, or you're just not getting the reaction you want, there's some passion missing in there somewhere, or it hasn't
Mhm.
been shared correctly, or to its maximum.
Right. Right. 100% agree. 100% agree. Well, my friend, uh, do we want to wrap up with anything, or have we exhausted all our options? Where are we at?
That's the crazy thing is it's getting to be that time of year where there's so much to talk about we couldn't possibly fill it in one go. Um, let's very briefly talk about the finalissima,
Yeah.
and
Yes.
then we'll
Yes.
wrap
Yes.
things up. Unless the chat has something they want to talk about, then we'll wrap things up and we'll see you guys on the next one. So the finalissima is if you're familiar with the outdoor version of this game, it is the champion from South America playing against the champion from Europe. Uh, in the first ever installment of the Futsal Finalissima, we saw two teams from each of those continents play in a semifinal and final tournament. So we saw Paraguay, who were runners up in the Copa America, and Argentina, who were the victors from the Copa America, take on Portugal, who were the champions of Europe, and also World Cup champions, by the way. So we had our World Cup champs involved in this tournament, defending champs, and Spain, who placed third in the Euro. If you're wondering why we have a third place team If you caught our video earlier this month on introducing the Finalissima, Russia was the runner-up. Since then, they are not allowed to participate with everything that's going on in the world, so they were not invited. So, and Spain took their place as the third place team, and they performed very admirably during the Euro and definitely deserved that spot. We did not lose anything by having a third place team in this tournament. I guarantee you
Not,
that, and
not a bad replacement.
not a bad replacement at all. So I think that so Portugal won the Finalissima on penalty kicks against Spain. So Europe reigned supreme across the semifinal. They beat Portugal beat Paraguay. They came from behind and beat them 3-2, and Argentina, surprisingly to me, lost to Spain 3-0. I thought that game would be much tighter in score line, but unfortunately it was not. And then even more surprisingly, when Argentina went into the third place match, they lost to Paraguay. So the champions of Europe of South America and the runners up, by the way, of the World Cup. So you had the runners up from the World Cup involved in this tournament and the champions.
Right.
Argentina were the runners up. They had won the previous World Cup. So this is a very, very good team, very well established, and they came away with a goose egg. I was absolutely shocked. I think that it does not take away from Portugal's win. I think that's the big story here. But the fact that it happened is probably the biggest surprise of the tournament.
That is very disappointing for Argentina.
Extremely disappointing showing for them, especially being hosts. They were at home,
Ooh.
and for those games, from what I saw in the live streams, I was able to catch it on YouTube live on Copa America's YouTube page, and the lower bowl of that stadium of Parque Roca was, to me, from what I could see, just eyeball test, completely full. Now that is a 15,500 seat stadium, and the entire lower bowl was full. So, although Argentina, the team, did not win, the attendance was a massive win from the Finalissima. I think that really proves that there's a demand. Now, granted, for the best teams in the world playing together, that's going to get some attention.
Right.
But I think it was an appropriate crowd that I think superseded expectation.
For sure, for sure. So Portugal, as usual, winning things. They're such a force. I mean, it's funny because they're this little island inside of Spain, and yet they're just a force to be reckoned with, churning out the likes of Ricardinho, just putting together team after team after team. So congrats to them.
Well, and what's interesting too is Portugal and Spain have truly dominated the main stage in national team sports. So when you look at the women's Euro, it was Portugal versus Spain. When you look at this competition, it was Portugal versus Spain. We just had the U19 Euros, Portugal versus Spain in the final, and Spain took away the wins in the women's Euro this year. In the U19, they took away the win, but Portugal's men's team, the defending World Cup champs, proving why they are, and still winning games. You know, you could question how they were going to perform since Ricardinho has retired from national team futsal, excuse me. But I that team has always been deep, and they prove it time and time again. And it's going to be good. I think that we're going to see some of these stars in Portugal that maybe previously were overshadowed by just the white hot supernova that is Ricardinho and futsal. Right. So I think we're going to get a lot more familiar and see a lot more household names out of Portugal and Spain, and these other countries as we start to see more and more futsal tournaments coming to light here.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And if you do not know, and you want to know, Ricardinho is an excellent person. He streams on Twitch, very generous, very loving, very nice guy. I mean, you couldn't ask for anybody better to represent the sport of futsal. I actually jumped into his Twitch stream and said hello, and he said very nicely, he said, "Hello, welcome, but this is for the Portuguese fans." And he continues speaking Portuguese. And I said, "I wish I could speak Portuguese. This is so cool." But he was very nice about it. But what a great gentleman. He was sitting there chatting with all the fans, just going. I mean, I think he was on there for 2 hours talking with fans. Just back and forth, and it was just, my mind was blown. I respect the heck out of the guy. I drew a mural on a wall of him doing a bicycle kick. I think he's great. So if you don't know, now you know. Check out Ricardinho, old reels. He's playing in Pendekar now, so definitely check him out.
And Pendekar United that he plays for now in Indonesia is owned by a YouTube content creator that has over 40 million views. He's a
Wow.
really big deal in Indonesia. He's the owner of the team, so they put out some really great content for the futsal team. It's very well put together, and so you can find plenty of highlights on what Ricardinho is doing now, post national team duties. He's still going around and growing the sport. He's just a passionate guy, and he's passionate about the people. When you follow him on social media, he's smiling from ear to ear all the time. He's enjoying the country. He just really great. There's also if you guys are interested in seeing futsal highlights and getting a feel, if you're new to futsal, on what its possibilities are, Clemino is a account on YouTube that has all kinds of futsal highlights. That's it's KLEMINHO. If you look him up, he has all kinds of futsal highlights. And so if you're bored and you want some place to go from here and kind of see what we're talking about and what it can be and why we get so excited about it, that's a great place to go.
Right. Right.
So with that, I want to thank everyone that stuck around for the stream today. We had a ton of fun talking about the women's game. I think that took up the lion's share of our conversation today, as it should. A lot of big moves coming from the women's side of the sport. Being able to talk about what's going on in other continents and countries with you guys was really great. Gave us a chance to scratch our itch for the love of futsal and share what we think with you guys. Remember, these are the opinions of ours and our own, but it's at least somebody talking about it. We're going to come back and do this again in the future. If you guys like what you see here and want to see more live streams, please feel free to reach out to us. Reach out to me on Twitter at FutsalJake. Join us in our Discord. The Discord channel will be listed in the description of this video when we put up the VOD. And we talk there all the time too, and share links to futsal there. And there's a community there growing of media people, some players, some GMs. We want to get people involved and network and grow this sport. So please join us there and have some fun. And there's plenty of sections there. We can goof around. We got a meme section if you want to post some memes, if that's your thing, which it's mine. So I'll probably be in there. If you guys want to self-promote, I've created a section to self-promote what you're doing. It does not have to be futsal related. We just want to network and get to know each other and build this community. And then finally, keep an eye on the YouTube channel, like and subscribe. We will be putting out more videos this month. I will be covering the Libertadores in a video like we discussed here in a shorter format. The Finalissima the same way. I will be having some news coming soon on some developments in the US and what's going on to develop our youth. So stay in touch. Make sure you guys like and subscribe, and we will catch you guys next time.
Bye. See ya.